Wren Brown Martin and her partner Graham were planning a new life in Jamaica for their young family when a vicious web campaign meant they needed 24-hour armed protection.
It was, you whore, you black African bitch, Wren's this, Wren that on internet for everyone to read.
Emails made clear what their tormentor planned.
Threatening to murder me, to murder and rape my wife and daughter, or send a crackhead round to kill us.
In England, Che Ankers had sex with a work colleague who soon after launched an online vendetta against him.
I had a website set up in my name declaring that I was gay. I had emails being sent to people that I worked with saying that I had criminal records and that I was lying on my application forms.
They'd all become victims of a 21st century harasser who can hide deep in the world of the internet. The Cyberstalker. Graham Brown Martin and his partner Wren had the chance of swapping a life in a big city for life on an island in the sun. Jamaica beckoned for a professional who worked in the music and media business.
Part of my experience in Jamaica was moving there to work in developing a recording studio to bring people from outside of Jamaica into the country to work with Jamaican artists. Wren, my wife, had just left university. Our daughter was only 3 at the time, hadn't started school, and we thought, well, this is a great opportunity to spend a year or two in a nice warm country and to work on this recording studio. Just seemed like a great opportunity that we didn't want to miss.
The couple decided the timing was perfect. Professionally and personally, Graham decided it would be good if he could make contact with people on the island that he already knew. As part of his job, Graham had come into contact with a photographer who lived in Jamaica.
I came in contact with him actually when I was editing a lifestyle magazine called Trace. It's sort of fashion and lifestyle, urban in nature. And he'd actually approached me via email to ask whether he could put some of his photographs in our magazine. He's a fashion and music photographer based in Kingston, Jamaica. I have to say, when I first met him in Jamaica, was that he was a creative person, intelligent, smart. I mean, he's Canadian Jamaican, lives in a fairly wealthy district of Kingston in a sort of gated community, drives a very nice car, all those kinds of things. So he had a lot of those kinds of trappings. I didn't feel at all unsafe. Seemed a very intelligent, funny, slightly eccentric guy. But then most of the people that I tend to meet in the creative fields, or certainly in the music industry, of a similar ilk.
The family prepared to exchange the noise of London for a lifestyle many would envy. And Graham got in touch with his Jamaica contact.
As we were moving over, one of the few people I actually knew in Jamaica was this guy. So I sent him an email and said, hey, we're coming over. It would be great to meet up and maybe do some projects together.
The Caribbean-based photographer made a different impression on Wren.
I thought he was slightly eccentric. He was quite funny, but always slightly on edge. We did get on quite well because I liked his girlfriend at the time. And having moved from London to Jamaica, we were obviously trying to make friends, and it was quite nice to have another young girl who kind of had similar interest in myself around to just to talk to.
The couples became friends, and an opportunity arose for Graham and the photographer to work together.
Immediately at this recording studio, there were a number of projects. Now, we needed a photographer because we wanted to capture this. There were so many well-known artists, both British artists, US artists, and Jamaican artists, and we needed a good photographer. There were a number of choices, I pitched really for our friend in Kingston to do the photos. And I have to say, things started off well. He would drive from Kingston to Port Antonio, which is a good 3-hour drive to take photographs. There was a significant amount of money being paid for the work involved, and we'd probably brought to him about $10,000 worth of work, which actually is quite a lot in that region.
At first, the professional and personal relationships went smoothly, so much so their Jamaican friend thought it a good idea to live nearer to each other.
He was very keen for us to leave Port Antonio, which is a very beautiful part of Jamaica. I mean, it's lovely, it's a rainforest, it's wonderful, unspoilt beaches, untouched by tourism. And he wanted us to move, myself and my family, to Kingston, which itself is a great city, but it's also quite violent.
We both decided that, we've come from London. London's very busy and would much rather stay in Port Antonio because our daughter at the time, she was settled in school and she was very happy.
Unfortunately, Jamaica is a country where there's 8 murders a day, which is worrying if you're a young family. We didn't want to expose ourselves to that, so we weren't going to move to Kingston. This seemed to become a bit of a problem for him, and it's a sort of a source of heated discussion.
That heated discussion was to lead to a strange and deeply troubling response. Their new friend sent emails which appalled Graham.
I received some imagery which was, I suppose the best way of describing it was paparazzi-style photographs of human roadkill that he would take on his way home. And what I mean by that is, these are people that have been horribly mutilated in car accidents. And he clearly had taken the time to photograph these people and without any dignity in the worst possible conditions. And I have to say, when I saw those photographs, it made me physically ill. And I'd asked him not to send me those kinds of photographs. And he had them on his website. And I said to him, look, this is like a snuff movie. You need to take these down. I think he thought that was quite funny. And I think at that point we began to realise there was some kind of. This was not somebody that we wanted exposed to my wife or my children, and not somebody I wanted to associate with.
Psychologists have now been able to spend years studying what it is about emails that makes communicating so potentially hurtful.
The ways that people communicate using the internet creates a space that perhaps doesn't allow the perpetrator to be more aware that the ways that they're interacting is inappropriate. So they don't have the social cues that are usually available offline. You don't have the emotions expressed, you don't have the tone of voice, you don't have those kind of things that show someone that this is inappropriate behaviour or harassing or upsetting for an individual.
The cyberstalking the Martins suffered was not simply about missing social signals, however. It was deeply threatening and eventually was to follow them back to London.
This stalking continued in my own home, my house, with where my child lives, where I've had friends having seen my home address published on the internet, saying you can run but you can't hide. If you see this white man around where you are, kick his teeth in.
He posted on an education website in the United States that my daughter, who at the time was 4 years old, was HIV positive.
Thousands of miles away, and Che Anchors had a problem with a cyberstalker too. Someone who hid behind emails and the internet as she harassed him. So much so, he still likes to keep a very low profile. Ironically, his stalking ordeal began very much in the physical rather than the cyber world, at an office party.
It was coming to the end of the night. We'd all drank a little bit too much than we should have done, and we just found ourselves in each other's company, and I ended up back at her house, and you could put it down to having a one-night stand. We slept together that night.
Che and his colleague, who police have asked us not to name for fear she may instigate reprisals, seemed to agree that what had happened was a one-off.
On the following Monday when we got to work, I spoke to her fairly early because she was dealing with some things for me, and she didn't mention anything, and nothing was ever mentioned, and it was never brought up in conversation with her ever again, really. It was just, it happened, we got back to work the next week, and everything carried on as it was previously in the professional relationship.
Convinced he'd never see her again, Che received a surprising proposal.
She did contact me in the October of 2000, and she said she was in Coventry for an interview and did I want to meet her in a hotel. And at that point I said, no, I don't wish to. a lot of time's passed. I don't think we're not going to have a relationship, so I think you should just go about your life, I'll go about my life, and we shouldn't really meet up. I did think it was weird that because she'd left in the September, the incident where we'd had the one-night stand was in the July, and it wasn't until October that this whole subject of us sleeping together had been brought up, and she wanted to meet up again. And so a lot of time had passed with no communication about it, so it was a bit odd, but I didn't read into it. I didn't see the point of reading into it. It was just an offer, and I refused it, basically.
She wanted to maintain a relationship with this guy, even though it was just a one-night stand, and in her mind, I guess she believed there was a chance to keep moving that forward.
Che, now in a permanent relationship with a new girlfriend, was shocked by his former colleague's blunt proposal. But what happened next was even more disconcerting. She sent the sort of email no one wants to receive.
So I'd been with my girlfriend, as she was now then, my wife now, Melanie, since the beginning of January that year. And on Valentine's Day, I had this email at work saying that I needed to go to an STI clinic because I'd apparently given this woman chlamydia. It was just a shock. And I think at that point, considering I had slept with her in July of the previous year and it's now February of the next year, you have to look at that in a suspicious way and think, well, hang on, if she knew, why she waited 8-9 months to tell me?
The unnerving email was just the first of a barrage of spiteful messages which suggested a stalker prepared to go to extreme lengths in pursuit of her foe.
I'd received all these emails, I'd received pornographic material through the post. We were finding more things, computers were confiscated. In her house they found handwritten letters of details about Melanie's parents, Melanie's family, their dates of birth, their maiden names, her sister's details.
For the British family now living in Jamaica, the internet was to become a weapon used to threaten their lives.
He began to post a countdown on his website on a black background with 3 red crosses. 1 cross for myself, 1 cross for Ren, 1 cross for my daughter. And these were to represent the countdown of 7 days, which meant if we hadn't left Jamaica, we were going to be killed.
On the mean streets of New York City.
You know, I've seen a lot of homicides and a lot of crime scenes. This is probably one of the most brutal I've seen.
There's no script.
This guy was hacked up. I mean, bad. What kind of savage, what kind of animal is going to do something like this?
Real cops.
I hear he's got a gun, he's got a gun.
Real victims.
I will never forget it as long as I live.
Real crimes.
I'm gonna lock you up for murder now.
Watching The Detectives, tonight at 9 on the Crime and Investigation Network HD.
These women all share a history
I hit him twice in the head.
of violent crime.
I started stabbing him with the scissors.
Some feel remorse.
I'm sorry.
Others claim innocence.
I didn't kill anybody.
A few show defiance.
I never felt so free in all my life.
The new series, Women Behind Bars, coming soon on the Crime and Investigation Network HD.
Elvive Nutrigloss, L'Oreal's first conditioner with pearl protein. It transforms dull hair into hair that shimmers with up to 85% more shine. With light-reflecting booster technology. Mirror Shine Cashmere Touch. Elvive Nutrigloss from L'Oreal Paris. And for fine hair that gets greasy quickly, Elvive Nutrigloss Light with citrus.
You're worth it.
At Vision Express, we can take a picture of the inside of your eyes using our digital retinal camera. And because we've invested in the latest technology, you can see what we see. It also means we can keep a photographic record of your eye health, too. Pop into Vision Express today, or book an eye test at visionexpress.com.
With the
the Dulux paint pot, you can paint a room easily and quickly. And when you've finished, it'll even clean itself. The Dulux paint pot. Painting just got easier.
Over 50 different careers to choose from. You don't have to be a pilot to fly in the RAF. Contact us now.
Schwartz Flavorful Recipe Mixes, a delicious blend of chopped herbs and slowly roasted spices. Discover the quick and easy flavorful recipe mixes from Schwartz.
Let's give it up for the optimists. The ones who think anything is possible. Let's hear it for the thrill seekers. The excitement lovers who think you can never have too much fun. And who think big, not small. Welcome to the Lotto way of thinking. Think Lotto.
At Homebase, we've got our biggest ever offer. A massive 15% off everything. That's an extra 15% on top of our other great offers. This Friday and Saturday at Homebase.
Lots of cities look the same up here, but down below, it's a whole other story.
I'm in the tunnels of a medieval knight who would lead the First Crusade. This door leads to the largest subterranean network ever built by the British Army. I'm retracing the footsteps of the 20th century's greatest monster, Adolf Hitler.
This is where you find the real story of how the mob got started.
It's a journey back in time.
I'm Don Wildman,
Your guide to cities of the underworld.
Fridays at 9 on History HD.
Che Anchors shared a one-night stand with a former work colleague who left it 8 months before emailing, on St. Valentine's Day, to say that he'd given her a sexually transmitted disease.
It was just a shock when I'd had this email and it was on such a particular day. And I think at that point, considering I had slept with her in July of the previous year and it's now February of the next year, you have to look at that in a suspicious way and think, well, hang on, if she knew, why she waited 8-9 months to tell me?
The email made for a difficult conversation with a girlfriend, Melanie, Che was hoping to marry.
We went to the clinic and we got tested and we had nothing wrong with us. I then called her and said, this isn't anything to do with me. Whatever's gone on, it's got nothing to do with me. And in one night, she rang me 2 or 3 times explaining it was, until I did get slightly more aggressive and tell her to stop ringing me. And I used strong language to tell her to stop ringing me because it had nothing to do with me.
Replying to emails encourages more communication. What Che did not realise was that by also calling a woman he'd ended a relationship with, he was unwittingly sending her signals encouraging her to keep in contact. Something he'd lived to regret.
The most common type of stalking, whether that online or offline, is to do with relationships gone wrong. If they are trying to pursue a relationship, any type of conversation, engagement with them gives them some kind of hope and belief that there is still something there to pursue.
Che's stalker was now pursuing him both online and offline, as he discovered when out with his partner, Melanie.
We were stood at the bar, we'd bought a drink, stood at the bar, and as I turned from the bar and Melanie was stood to my left, I could see over her shoulder, and sat behind her at a table was just sat there staring at us. And that was quite chilling actually, because it made you realise that what happened in February was actually a pack of lies, because it was all about this. She knew I had a girlfriend, she knew I had a girlfriend in February, and that's how I understand it to be. And the accusations that she laid were all trying to undermine that relationship that I was building.
More efforts were to be made by an ever bolder stalker to undermine the relationship.
I got home from work one night and there was a hand-delivered note through my front door. It was addressed to Melanie. And I rang Melanie up and said, have you been home? And she said no. And I read to her what was on this piece of paper and said, look, something's come through my door and it's explaining to me that, well, it's explaining to you that I'm having affairs and that you should be aware of that. And the next evening, another note was attempted to be posted. And Melanie opened the door and stood there at the door. And she made up some story about trying to raise a friend that was living there and things like that.
What was going on in her mind, who knows, whether that's revenge or whether that's trying to still believe that a relationship could be established if she pursues it far enough. But having the internet allow more methods of stalking.
In fact, the stalker was about to set a trend, so-called offline or real-world stalking, and then online or cyberstalking.
I think then Melanie started getting emails reputing to be from someone that she went to school with and saying that Melanie should be aware of the state of her relationship because the person that she's with, as in me, is having all these affairs and blah, blah, blah. But then in the end of November of the same year, Melanie started getting flat tyres on a car. Or she had 4 flat tyres in 4 days. Melanie got very upset with it. Her car was the point of attack. It was always her car that was damaged. So she started to get panic attacks. She wouldn't drive on motorways. She thought the brakes may have been tampered with. She got herself a panic alarm.
A one-night stand had led to a hellish 15 months for Che Ankers. His stalker had tracked him to a bar where Ankers shared a drink with his now new fiancée. The stalker began sending letters alleging he was having affairs. And to combat damage being carried out to one of their cars, the couple had to mount vigils to try to catch the perpetrator.
It affected life dramatically, really. We were sat up till 5 o'clock in the morning, going to bed for a couple of hours and going to work. So it affected life quite dramatically, and you did feel like you were a bit of a prisoner. You were living the life of a dog, really.
They turned to the police for help.
We got the police involved for the first time and explained the whole story to the police, the letters and everything. And then they advised to get some CCTV, so we put some homes cameras in the window and things like that, started to watch things.
It wasn't long before the cameras captured their stalker in action.
We saw this car pull up, which happened to be her car. We could see it was her car. And we waited for her to do whatever she seemed to be doing. And when she stood up and appeared to be walking back to her car, we left the house and asked her what she was doing. And she just declared her ignorance and said she wasn't doing anything, and that was that, really. And I said, look, I've had enough of this. I've absolutely had enough of this. I'm calling the police. I think you should come and stand inside while I ring the police, and you can explain why you're here around Melanie's car to the police. And it was all very calm, really. She was very calm, very, well, oddly calm of the whole situation. There was no shouting. There was no aggression. It was just, okay. And police came and she went off with the police.
But the police felt unable to prosecute. The camera had captured a woman on a street, which in itself is not an offence. She was released. But the harassment continued, now mainly via the internet.
And from that moment on, it went purely into cyberstalking and internet-based stalking. We were getting lots of emails. I had a website set up in my name declaring that I was gay. I had emails being sent to people that I worked with saying that I had criminal records and that I was lying on my application forms, and all kinds of defamatory things were being said about me in my professional manner and also my personal life as well. It was all trying to be muddied up.
Stalking or cyberstalking is a form of bullying. It's a form of harassment. It's just a more severe form of harassment. And indeed, it can be done on all sorts of levels. It could be that they try and do things to facilitate them losing their job, for instance. It can go that far. It can be spreading lies online, or it can be threatening them online, saying that they're going to hurt themselves or hurt their family or whoever.
In Jamaica, a London couple looking to work in the Caribbean had suffered hugely upsetting online stalking too. At first, distressing emails had been sent by a one-time colleague to Graham Brown Martin only. Now, it was his wife's turn.
To begin with, I didn't think anything serious was going to come out of it, because obviously it's somebody we've met before, somebody we thought we knew quite well.
I don't know why, I mean, he was attacking Ren as much. It was almost as if that she was getting in the way between me and him, and that if only she was out of the way, then I would be his best friend.
He probably thought that he could have, Graham and him could have set up a business together if I hadn't been around.
It felt like he was a jilted lover.
So far, the couple had received disgustingly graphic emails. Bad enough. But cyberstalkers with relatively limited expertise can spread their venom, literally, to the entire world.
He was clearly adept and understood the internet very well, understood search engines, understood forum board postings, discussion boards, all that kind of thing, understood that he had this following amongst people that liked Jamaican music and Jamaican culture, and it consequently used all that to write just horrible things and offensive things and threatening things about us on the internet for people to see.
The internet provides all these terrible but wonderful opportunities, I guess, if someone wants to harass someone, that they don't even have to do the work themselves, that they can actually set up deceit to make others believe in it, to cause that other person grief.
Initially, it was racially based. He would call my husband a cracker, white man this. We set up a company called Jamaican Digital, which he then made a version of it on the internet called YT Digital.
He was using issues over race to whip up anger and hatred towards my family to make us unsafe.
And then it was cracker, go home, whitey, you know, and then my daughter was referred to as mulatto and a mongrel. I was referred to as African black nigger bitch.
So you imagine we're in a, not in our own country. We only know a few people. There's a guy that's calling us up, threatening to murder us. He's publishing stuff about us on the internet. This is then we then found lots of other people reading his stuff and then sending us emails. So we're now getting hundreds of emails, not just from him, but from people that he's wound up.
The couple feared for their lives.
We never felt that it was necessarily him that was going to inflict physical harm on us, but that he would cause others to inflict physical harm.
Not knowing anybody that you could possibly trust to call and seek advice was very scary. And, you know, we felt quite alienated and frightened, and more frightened because I had a 3-year-old whom I was trying to protect.
The stalker turned on their young child, suggesting in an email that she might be killed.
When he turned his attention onto the child, you know, you kind of think, wow, this person's really screwed up, you know, because he's met this child, he has had a lot of interactions with her, and now he's threatening to kill her.
At one point, he even posted on an education website in the United States that my daughter, who at the time was 4 years old, was HIV positive.
Then a website appeared with a simple and chilling message: get off the island or die.
He began to post a countdown on his website on a black background with 3 red crosses. 1 cross for myself, 1 cross for Ren, 1 cross for my daughter. And these were to represent the countdown of 7 days, which meant if we hadn't left Jamaica, we were going to be killed. When we reported this to the police, the Jamaican police, they looked at the material and the threats that were being made, and then gave us effectively a police guard. We were then told that we should get our own private security, and this is armed security.
Police left 1 armed guard with the family who'd accepted advice to recruit private security, not what the Browns had in mind on their paradise island.
You are facing death. If someone's calling you and writing on the internet and saying, I'm going to kill you, and you've got someone sitting in your house protecting you, it is real. You know, you never forget it. It's very sick and it makes you feel physically sick. And, you know, it would have been okay if it was just Graham and I. But I also had a young child who needed protecting, who was also a target. She was exposed to a lot of guns. You know, the police in Jamaica have guns. So when they turn up on the property, they had guns with them. The security guard who was with us 24 hours a day had a gun with him. So, you know, she was seeing things which otherwise she would never have been exposed to in London or perhaps in Jamaica if we hadn't found ourselves in that situation. So it was very, very, very scary.
With websites urging people in Jamaica to attack the family, they decided to move back to England. But their ordeal was to become even worse. The cyber world knows no borders.
He published our home address 3 or 4 times in different locations, put up maps with a circle around where we lived.
Cheyanka's stalker had crashed into his computer to get details of a holiday he and his partner had planned. Their tormentor was about to journey to South America to continue her online harassment campaign.
So we could have turned up to this airfield in the middle of Venezuela, surrounded by absolutely nothing, and she would have been stood there. And once we realised that, when we were in the police station, it was kind of like, what would we have done?
As part of Serial Killer Sunday.
After he felt he'd gained their trust, he would strike them around the head.
Alexander Pichushkin, one of Russia's most notorious serial killers.
He just went about his killing in a very business-like fashion.
Uncover the grim reality of the man they called the chessboard killer, Alexander Pichushkin. Sunday at 9 on the Crime and Investigation Network, HD.
Desperate to get rid of your textured walls and ceilings? There is a better way. Polycell Smooth Over covers a textured surface to get it smooth, ready for painting. And the new tools now make it even easier. Polycell, behind every great finish.
Looking for a rewarding cash ISA? Well, the new Reward ISA is a big idea from Abby. It gives you a 1.5% tax-free return. And on top of that, you'll also be rewarded with a special bonus if you leave your money untouched. 2% variable at the end of the first year, leading to an impressive 3.5% tax-free. For more about Abby's Reward ISA, call 0800 80 80 80. The Reward ISA is available from branches of Abbey, Bradford and Bingley and Alliance and Leicester, which have joined the Santander Group. Together, we are Santander.
Because your loo won't smell fresh unless it's been freshly cleaned, there's new improved Harpic 3-in-1. As well as releasing cleaning agents with every flush, there's now 20% more fragrance, continually released for lasting freshness. New Harpic 3-in-1 helps leave your toilet squeaky clean.
Citroen Economics helps you save money. The new C4 range from $9,995 or $7,995 when your old car qualifies for our £2,000 scrappage allowance. The C3 Super Mini does up to 76 mpg, range from $7,095. The C1 City Car from $6,395 does up to 83 mpg. That's around the world on 39 tanks. Citroen Economics, money well spent.
Mrs. Osborne, welcome back. Obviously happy with your car insurance.
Hello, I'm back again.
Yes, good to see you. Mr. Peters, how are you?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
Very well, good to see you.
Thank you very much.
How many more?
61.
Oh, good.
1,000.
All right.
176 happy. But 3 couldn't make it, so...
Such a shame.
Yeah.
Welcome back.
Good morning.
Good to see you. Good morning.
Hi there, good morning.
Last year, thousands of people came back to Norwich Union. And with savings of up to £140 on car insurance, this year there may be even more. Get a happy quote.
I fell to the ground. I could feel the heat of the sun. I can remember thinking, this can't be happening on a day like this.
A guy came up to me who I knew, and he said, people are dying.
The death tolls rose. It was like a bad dream. People panicking, people screaming, because you suddenly got no control.
It's something that everybody wished had never happened. But I think it's also something that nobody should forget.
Marking the 20th anniversary, Hillsborough Remembered. Coming soon on History HD.
A British couple who'd hoped to spend a working sabbatical in the Caribbean sunshine had found their lives blighted by a cyberstalker. A brief professional acquaintance with a photographer had led to a series of deeply disturbing images being sent by email, followed by the posting of threatening websites aimed at both menacing the couple and of ruining their reputations. Eventually, a comment made by their daughter convinced the couple to leave.
When she did say to me that, "Mummy, you know, why don't we get a gun and shoot the stalker," which she referred to his name at the time, that was very shocking.
That's time to leave. You know, we didn't want her to be thinking in those terms. But when our daughter can see what's going on and has the concept of killing someone and knows what the guns are for, we decided to leave. And we left Jamaica. We had one bodyguard. We didn't tell the police that we were leaving. We left everything behind, and we just shipped out in the middle of the night to go to the airport in Kingston, Normal Manly, and we got on the first flight back home.
But the stalking did not end. Cyber stalkers can do harm to their victims wherever they are. Internet sites now told people where in London to find the family and why they should be attacked.
Whilst we got back to London and this stalking continued, in my own home, my house with where my child lives, where I've had friends having seen my home address published on the internet, saying you can run but you can't hide. If you see this white man around where you are, kick his teeth in. You know, it was very scary because it's happening in my home, somewhere where previously it's been my sanctuary.
The world has become a small place because of the internet, and an individual can feel more paranoia and fear because they don't know when they're being watched, and they could be being watched at any time now, and they don't know what kind of information about themselves is actually being found by someone who is harassing them. They don't know if their emails are being looked at. They don't know if someone else is being sent false rumours about them.
He published our home address 3 or 4 times in different locations, put up maps with the circle around where we lived. But that, to us, indicated that people knew where we lived. He was still able to exert influence and some kind of control and power, fear on us from Kingston, but while we were in London.
Psychologists now believe that cyberstalking or online harassment can do more harm than so-called offline stalking.
When you're stalked offline, you feel okay about tapping into your social support networks to actually report it to a friend or a family member. But if it happens online, people are sometimes more likely to keep that information to themselves and think it's probably trivial, I don't want to worry anyone with it, I'm overreacting to this kind of upset. So if they haven't got their support systems in place to look after them, then potentially it can cause them more psychological damage.
Stalking, you can't see it. I mean, it's not. It's when you see someone being mugged, you see bruises, maybe a broken limbs or blood. You know, if it's a rape, you see a different kind of distress. You see a stalking or a cyber stalking, it's like, well, I think one officer sort of said, well, it's name calling, and it's not name calling. It's a bit like, you know, it's more than bullying, and bullying is bad enough. It just affects you at so many different psychological levels.
Che Ankers, whose one-night stand with a former colleague led to a stalking campaign, hoped that his tormentor's arrest might end his ordeal. But the stalker was about to find that the way the web works would lead to her rearrest.
Online, there are ways to be able to find individuals, and this is the case with all sorts of crimes as well. So the internet, while it can be more dangerous and it can allow more harassing behaviours to happen, in contrast also, we can also find the perpetrators in some ways more easily too.
I was sat at work and I was still receiving pornographic materials to home, to work, and just everything was just all up in the air and it was constantly going on. had an email at work into one of the Hotmail accounts that we had. And I asked an IT guy that I was working with, is there any way I can trace an email? And he said, yes, you can look up the IP address for it. So I then went through, found where this domain went to, and it went to a West Midlands NHS Primary Care Trust. So I contacted that Primary Care Trust and explained the situation, and I said, look, I believe that someone is sat somewhere in your organisation and they are doing derogatory things to me through your IT systems, basically. I had a phone call back within 24 hours, someone heading up IT security for the NHS, who I explained my story to. He went off, called me back within 2 weeks and said, I need to speak to your dealing police officer. I need to speak to the guy that's in charge of your case. And I said, I assume by that you've found something that's positive. And he said, well, yes, I have.
The IT man had found the offending emails, and police were able to investigate the stalker's behaviour. What they discovered was a woman intent on invading the life of Che Ankers, his new partner, and her family.
They found in her house, they found handwritten letters of details about Melanie's parents, Melanie's family, their dates of birth, their maiden names, her sister's details. She tried to compile a dossier on my family.
And alongside the stalker's dossiers, an even more worrying discovery. She had followed Che and his partner halfway around the world.
We went off on holiday and we were away for, 3.5 weeks. We came back, we're in the taxi coming back home from Birmingham Airport, and I got a phone call from the Leicestershire Constabulary asking us to go up and make some statements, and they'd show us what they found. And when we got there, we were in this police room and they'd laid out all these sheets of paper, and there was this one thing, and it was from a tour company out in Venezuela, and I just said, well, that's nothing, because that's just an itinerary that we've just done on holiday. And he went, oh, where did you go? And I said, I went to Venezuela. And the detective that was looking after the case made a wry smile, and I looked at him, and he got quite a dry sense of humour, and I looked at him and said, well, why are you smiling? Are you telling me we weren't the only people in Venezuela?
Che Ankers' stalker had followed him and his partner across continents. What had become clear was that the stalker's cyber activities had been cranked up a notch. She'd hired a company to hack into Che's emails.
The company she used was a company that quite a lot of high-tech police forces were aware of. And what it apparently was this thing that she'd got from my email account that she'd had burgled was basically an itinerary of every day, from the day we were getting on flights, the time we were getting on flights, where we were staying, right down to the nth detail of all the travel that we were doing, not so much the daily activities, but the travel. And yes, it turned out that she'd seen this and booked the identical itinerary. But unbeknown to her, we'd changed what we were doing about 2 weeks before we went. One particular point of when we were in Venezuela is we had to take a light aircraft flight, of which there was 6 seats. There was myself, Melanie, and 2 friends of ours, and the pilot. And that 6th seat, if we hadn't have changed our itinerary, our plans, would have been her. So we could have turned up to this airfield in the middle of Venezuela, surrounded by absolutely nothing, and she would have been stood there. And once we realised that, when we were in the police station, it was kind of like, what would we have done? And I think I turned around to the policeman and said, I don't know what time of day it would have been here, but you'd have been hearing from me. And he smiled, and yeah, but yes, she did go there. It definitely took it up another level, because what had gone on previously had all been local, but to know that someone was willing to spend that money and to travel that far just to try and appear in your life for a split second, it makes you wonder what her intentions would have been if she had have achieved that. And what situation could have occurred if she had have achieved that? How would we have reacted? You don't know. You don't know.
The stalker was brought to court and given a restraining order. But a month later, she was again stalking, and this time she was using the online world to try to defraud her victims to the tune of £500,000. Che's wife was contacted out of the blue by a bank asking for identity verification related to a large loan request.
She was put straight through to the fraud team, spoke to this woman that was handling with the situation, and this woman said, the reason why we're contacting you is because there's been an application made in your name, but one of the addresses that has been used you don't seem to have lived there. And Melanie said, can you tell me the address? And she said, no, because of data protection. And Melanie said, well, if I give you an address, will you confirm to me whether it's that one? And she gave living address in Hinckley, and she said, yes, that's the address that's been used. And at that point we said, well, actually, we know what's going on here. We think you should contact this police officer, and we gave him the police officer's name in the Leicestershire Constabulary. We also rang Leicestershire Police immediately, told them what had gone on, and I think that might have actually been on a Tuesday, and then on the Friday of the same week she'd been arrested again. So she hadn't even been out of court longer than a month, I think, by the time this had all gone on. We had to go to the police station probably a week, 2 weeks later to give some statements, and they showed us what they'd found out in that period of time. And what they'd found out in that period of time is that she'd tried to take out in loans just short of £500,000 in my name, Melanie's name, joint applications, and even using Melanie's sister's name.
The stalker was eventually rearrested and kept in custody whilst on remand. But Che's ordeal was far from over, and for Graham Brown Martin, what lay ahead was intense frustration that the UK police could not now prevent his cyberstalker from continuing his harassment.
It appears that there's a gaping hole in the international legal framework for cyberstalking.
You know, this guy has no limits. He picks on a child. He has no limits. He will do whatever he can to get at us.
On the mean streets of New York City.
You know, I've seen a lot of homicides and a lot of crime scenes. This is probably one of the most brutal I've seen.
There's no script.
This guy was hacked up, I mean bad. What kind of savage, what kind of animal is going to do something like this?
Real cops.
I hear he's got a gun, he's got a gun.
Real victims.
I will never forget it as long as I live.
Real crimes.
I'm gonna lock you up for murder now.
Watching the detectives, next on the Crime and Investigation Network, HD.
Jump on board for Richard Curtis's funniest film ever. It's this spring's must-see movie.
Wow.
10 out of 10. Don't miss The Boat That Rocked.
Scroll it, pause it, click it, cross it, crack it, switch, update it, technologic, technologic, technologic.
One of the issues that dentists are raising is the issue of acid erosion. Acid erosion is really the weakening and the softening of enamel caused by acid, which is normally in our diets. That weakened enamel on your teeth can be brushed away. It's very difficult to see yourself whether you have acid erosion. Teeth can appear very healthy but have acid damage. The first port of call always would be to go and see a dental professional. I would recommend that you use products such as Sensodyne Pronamel. Replace your normal toothpaste twice a day and it will help minimize the risk of acid erosion.
On DVD and Blu-ray now.
Hello? Yeah, I can talk.
Grab the looter, cruder, even a ruder extended version.
Oh my God.
My Best Friend's Girl. Own it now.
So we can offer you 25% off for Bridgestone and Firestone tyres.
Wow, that's great.
Oh, thanks.
Experience delights. Skechers lightest shoe ever. Delightfully light. Delightfully fashionable. Delights. New from Skechers.
Lots of cities look the same up here, but down below, it's a whole other story.
I'm in the tunnels of a medieval knight who would lead the First Crusade. This door leads to the largest subterranean network ever built by the British Army. I'm retracing the footsteps of the 20th century's greatest monster, Adolf Hitler. This is where you find the real story of how the mob got started. It's a journey back in time.
I'm Don Wildman, your guide to cities of the underworld.
Fridays at 9 on History HD.
These women all share a history
I hit him twice in the head.
of violent crime.
I started stabbing him with the scissors.
Some feel remorse.
I'm sorry.
Others claim innocence.
I didn't kill anybody.
A few show defiance.
I never felt so free in all my life.
The new series, Women Behind Bars, coming soon on the Crime and Investigation Network, HD.
Che Ankers had shared a one-night stand with a colleague. Subsequently, she'd slashed the tyres of his partner's car, plagued the couple with menacing emails, and set up hurtful websites before hacking into Ankers' emails and uncovering his holiday plans.
She felt that she was spurned, jilted, hurt. It has to be something like that. Whether she has a naturally vindictive personality, I don't know. I really couldn't answer what went through her mind when she started this whole thing running.
She even followed the couple as far as South America before using the internet to try to borrow £500,000 in the couple's name. For the victims of her campaign, the use of the web created a global and permanent reminder of her harassment.
The internet leaves a permanent record about ourselves, our interactions online. When we send emails, we put messages on discussion boards or whatever, they are there to remain. So if someone puts up information that's false about us, then they also remain online. How do you defend that? Well, that's not so easy to do. And how much energy have you got to try and dispel all the rumours that are set there in front of you as well? You can't delete it, it is going to remain.
Che's stalker had made a basic error. Her emails were traceable. She was eventually arrested, but had continued her harassment when on remand. With a catalogue of offences to her name, Che Ankers' stalker eventually stood trial and was found guilty.
It was brilliant. It was brilliant, and I try not to smile about it because you don't want to antagonise the situation. And as much as it came to a conclusion at that court case, and she did spend time in prison, hopefully she's learnt from that she shouldn't do it again and she should just leave us alone to get on with our lives. But you've always got it in the back of your head that it could at some point reoccur.
And the nagging fear that she might reappear has credibility. In asking this programme not to name the stalker, the police have acknowledged that she may still be a danger. Cyberstalking had ruined the adventure for a family starting a new life in Jamaica. Now back in their native London, the couple's hell is not over. Their stalker continues to use the internet to harass them. He's using the web to post more damaging material about them and to encourage others to join in. There are plenty of ways of using cyberspace to stalk.
There are revenge sites online that people will go to put up fake information about someone and to be able to set up lies that others might buy into as well.
He was putting my email address online and saying, you know, send this guy emails until he can't take it anymore, I think were the words that he used. So there was, again, this sort of stalking by proxy.
And even though the couple are back in the UK, there's little the authorities can do to bring the cyberstalker to justice.
If this material was coming from somebody in the UK, then it would come under various Telecommunications Acts and Harassment Acts, and we would just have him arrested, and then he would potentially face a custodial sentence. But because it's coming from outside of the UK, it's outside of our jurisdiction. There's nothing that we can do while it's coming from, while he's in Jamaica. If he decides to come to England, then we can arrest him.
Stalking is such a brand new crime per se anyway, and then the internet came along, and so now we have to deal with it on a different level. Digital communication changes constantly. We have to be aware of how we're using it. We can use it more for monitoring and surveillance, and increasingly so. So we have to be on top of the game to know exactly what's happening, to be able to construct our laws, but also to be able to support individuals too.
It appears that there's a gaping hole in the international legal framework for cyberstalking.
When it happens internationally, how do we deal with this internationally? Because one country might not have laws to deal with it, another might have a different law perhaps.
Why aren't they doing something? Why haven't they encouraged the Jamaican police to arrest him, or even put the fear of God into him so he will stop doing this, because he's not going to stop.
The law and the policing so far established to fight stalking seems already behind where it needs to be to fight the very 21st century crime of cyberstalking, a type of harassment which generates very real suffering in the offline or real world.
You know, this guy has no limits. He picks on a child, he has no limits. He will do whatever he can to get at us. And it has gone on for so long. I mean, you'd kind of think after a month or two, or even a year, he will stop. It's been 5 years and he hasn't stopped.
Cyberstalking is a growth crime, and it seems it will only get bigger. Community websites offer enormous potential for wrongdoing.
Social networking sites are dangerous because of all the information that individuals put up online. So they can put up who they are, where they live, they might say their age, their marital status, they give pictures of themselves where they've been on holidays. They know who they're linked to as well. So if someone wants to go and pursue an individual, they don't just have the information of that individual, they have the information of their friends. They might even hook up with their friends to find out information about the individual that they want to stalk. So this can be quite a big problem.
We've got 2 billion people connected to the internet. Now, whether it's eBay, Amazon, or any of the applications, Facebook, MySpace, whatever, that you're accessing, 2 billion people are connected to the internet. Now, if this affects only 1% of those people, this is a 10 million person problem. Once the genie is out of the lantern, which it is, the understanding that you can stalk someone with impunity from outside of your nation state to another nation state and get away with it, it will happen.
Graham and Ren suffer cyberstalking every day of their lives because every day websites urge people in London to take whatever revenge their online harasser seems to think they deserve.
We're having to continuously watch our backs, look on various websites, see if anything at all has been written about us. You know, a lot of Graham's personal time goes into it. So while he's looking for all this stuff on the internet, I'm having to be looking out for the children, doing everything. We're not spending time as a family because he's busy trying to make sure that all these things are removed.
They and Cheyankas must live with the knowledge that the internet has provided a vengeful stalker with the means to make their lives miserable. For Cheyankas, that misery began with one night he'll always regret.
Holy. Yeah, because if I hadn't have slept with her on that night, then none of this would have ever happened. So I wholly regret that, yeah. But I can't blame myself for my actions on the night because my actions on the night were as what they were. You don't expect a situation like that to come out of a one-night stand.
This guy has got away with it for 5 years and is still effectively and has laughed at the British authorities. There's no means of enforcement.
I wouldn't want anyone else to go through it, you know, because it may not be physical, but it's mental. You know, it's there all the time. You're thinking about it. You can't put your name in a search engine without all this stuff he's written coming up. It's there. It's not going to go anywhere, you know, and it's not fair. It's not nice. We didn't do anything at all to deserve this.
When a jilted lover won't let go.
Everything I did, he just was there, threatening me and being aggressive.
Things can swiftly become dangerous.